the Tao Te Ching. Having gone through the whole section on Te, we now come back after a week's hiatus, courtesy of Los Angeles' situation, to approach the Tao. And as we come to approach the Tao, we have one more interruption, and we'll just pause here. Notice that if our attentiveness is bodily based, interruptions disperse the concentration. Whereas if our yoga is within language, as long as we maintain our attentiveness to the symbolic core of language, it doesn't matter what happens physiologically. The physiological events are extraneous to the concentration. Well, the Sanskrit term for concentration is dhyana, out of which we would get in Chinese chan, which we get in Japanese zen. Dhyana is concentration of what? It's the kinesthetic attentiveness of the body, which is brought to a transformation so that it interiorizes. But in that transformation, if we just interiorize sense, we get inner sense. And this sets up the ego. The ego is the focus of inner sense. And it's purely illusion. It has no real bearing at all. It's a provisional, operative command center, but it is disturbable by the world. You can always bring someone's ego into play by simply manipulating the surrounding conditions of their body or their body. But once that transformation happens, once the interiorization happens, once yoga becomes interiorized, then a different quality develops. The old Sanskrit word, dhyana, concentration, is the concentration not of inner sense. If one seeks to just concentrate inner sense, you get tension. But dhyana concentration is quite different. In classical Mahayana Buddhism, it's called the Parmigia of Perfection. And there were 6 perfections. The first perfection is always giving. It's called dana. If one learns to give, you can teach children and even animals to give. When giving transforms and deepens, it becomes something else. And along with giving, along with dana, there were 2 other perfections that went with it and made a stable triangle or stable triad. One was called sila, which we would call morality, or perhaps to be truthful. On a deeper level, it's ethical behavior, doing what's right, doing what's right. And the other was patience, called kshanti. Patience and morality both deepen like giving. When patience deepens, it becomes strength. In Sanskrit, it's called virya, and it's the same root word from which the English word virile comes from. Latin, many other languages have the same kind of root. So that patience develops into strength. Like in the tarot deck, the 8th card, strength. The woman who holds open the lion's roar. the lion's mouth. Behind her is patience, which is deepened into strength. Morality, when it deepens, is the root, the very root of wisdom. So that sila deepens into what was called prajna. But giving deepens and becomes dhyana. So that the root source for concentration, for the yoga of deep attentiveness, is givingness. It's a very curious thing. So that when you come to classics of spiritual instruction like the Tao Te Ching, one has to have quality of attentiveness of language. That attentiveness of language is based upon the ability to give your attention. If you have the attention, you cannot hear from them. You have to give the attention. Or, to be perhaps more specific, you have to gift your attention to the speaker. And likewise, the speaker must gift their words to you. But the whole nature of a dialogue is this exchange of gifts of language and attentiveness. And it's in the ecology of the flow of this that true meditation develops the spirit. The spirit gains its amperage. It's like every little nanosecond is like a drop of water. But as the nanoseconds collect in duration and become a second, or become 10 seconds, or become a minute, it's like the drops of water collect and they become like a river, or a very large river, or a lake. And finally, they collect along the become ocean. And it's this oceanic wholeness that comes out of deep attention, language, in the givingness of truthful language and the givingness of attention is the shortcut. One doesn't have to go through 2 million years of evolution to become physiologically Homo sapiens sapiens. One can, in some reasonable psychological thought time, learn to transcend the distractiveness of this world. So the Tao Te Ching, when it comes to speak of Tao, we are being spoken to by someone who can concentrate language almost at the top of the line of Homo sapiens sapiens. When Lao Tzu gives us his language, he gifts us from an ocean of attentiveness. And we cannot respond to that unless we likewise gift him with an indefinite attentiveness. Now, most of the translations of the Tao Te Ching, while sensitive to certain aspects of Lao Tzu, certain aspects of Taoism, and even in something as wonderful as Master Mi's translation of the Tao Te Ching, one senses a very interesting kind of attentiveness. Learn since a child. Or John C.H. Wu's translation, also learned since a child, but while Master Mi studied in the mountains of central China, John C.H. Wu studied in the mountains of central Taiwan. I've brought their 2 translations of the beginning of the Tao, the section on Tao, to compare with the language which Lao Tzu speaks. Here's how John C.H. Gould gives the beginning of the Tao Te Ching, which we have finally come to. Tao can be talked about, but not the eternal Tao. Names can be named, but not the eternal name. As the origin of heaven and earth, it is nameless. As the mother of all things, it is nameable. So as ever hidden, we should look at its inner essence. As always manifest, we should look at its outer aspects. These two flow from the same source, though differently named, and both are called mysteries. The mystery of mysteries is the door of all essence. Master He's handling is somewhat different. It has a different tone. Tao, as the absolute way of the universe, cannot be conveyed with words. That which can be conveyed with words is merely relative conception. Although names have been applied to it, the absolute truth is indescribable. One may designate nothingness as the origin of the universe, and beingness as the mother of the myriad things. From the perspective of nothingness, one may perceive the subtle operation of the universe. From the perspective of beingness, one may distinguish individual things. Although differently named, nothingness and beingness are one indivisible whole. This truth is so subtle. As the ultimate subtlety, it is the gate of all wonders. Now both these translations have their place, have their purposes and their uses, and both show a great deal of study of the Tao Te Ching. But neither of them speak Lao Tzu. Lao Tzu nowhere talks about merely relative conception. There are no Chinese characters that mean those words. There is here the mother of all things, it is nameable. It's a kind of a rough jest of what is being said, but is not what is being said. When we come to Lao Tzu, when we come to the Chinese text, when we come to see what is being said here, the very first character that appears is Tao. Then there's a second character. Then the third character that appears is Tao. And then there are two characters, and then the sixth character is Tao. So of the first six characters, three of them are Tao. So there's Tao, blank, Tao, blank, blank, Tao. What Lao Tzu is saying here concerns a repetition very rapidly of Tao. Later, the second character will be Ming, name, and this particular character is followed by another character, and then Ming appears again, and then two characters, and then Ming. So of the first six characters, three are Tao. Of the next six, three are Ming. So that whatever it is that Lao Tzu is saying, he's saying very rapid repetitions of Tao, very rapid repetitions of Ming. Tao, Ming. And he's juxtaposing them without any commentary whatsoever, because he's speaking essentially. Now it's interesting that if you put the first six characters before your inner eye, and then you bring the next six characters up, the characters for Ming superimpose upon the characters for Tao. Every time there's a character for Tao, the character for Ming is in the same place. The second character is used both times. And the fourth character that comes up and the fifth character that comes up are also the same. So he has given us like a hexameter of 6 Chinese characters where there's Tao blank Tao blank blank Tao Ming blank Ming blank blank Ming. So he is set up at the very beginning of what he is saying about Tao has something underneath it on the other side that could be said about names. And names are the essence, in a way, of language. Not a yogic concentration like Om, like a sacred syllable, but naming. Naming as a function is projective from the inside out. One doesn't come to something and reads the name as a label. One designates names. In Genesis, it is Adam who names things and they become whatever it is that he names. Not that they become exactly what he names, but they become whatever they are for him. So our namingness is very powerful. It is a creative transformation of the world in which something from inside us melds with the world, and the world becomes what that is through the alchemical bonding of the name. So that naming is like a chemical valence. And if I can use this kind of metaphor, if you permit, this kind of scientific metaphor, it's as if nature were all ionized, that nothing in nature were really what it is, but all just approximately ionized, and only when man creatively interacts with it with language does he provide the missing electrons for everything, and things come out of their ionized state and become what they are. So man is not just made in the image of the Creator, he is the Creator. He finishes creation by adding the little sparks of light that were missing. Those who have ever studied Kabbalah can understand that. One has to understand that in language, in spirit language, man gives the final electrons that brings nature out of its ionic plasma into being what it is. And that this function creates the 10,000 things. The 10,000 things in their zero-based Tao are all ionized plasma. Nothing occurs separately. It's a universal cosmic ionized plasma of which there is no separate thing whatsoever. Only when we, perfectly balanced in between Tao in the first phase and the 10,000 things in the fifth phase, only we in the third phase, by naming them, by bringing language from inside out, does the correspondence between Tao, Gen, and the 10,000 things come into being. So that it's as if the first, the third, and the fifth places gel together. That triad, that triangle, that trinity is a universal form. That's the trinity of Dana, Sila, and Kshanti, giving, patience, and morality. But that triad, that Father, Son, Holy Spirit, that Trinity, that triad, that thrice greatest quality, that correspondence of Tao, Gem, and the 10,000 things, has a complement that comes from transformation. The complement that comes from transformation is that Te comes into play. And corresponding to Te, in the second, E, or symbols, come into play in the fourth. Now there's a mystery, there's a subtlety involved. Tao can never be designated. It's zero-based, but to think that we have delegated the zero to it would be a flaw. It would be an arrogance, subtle arrogance. It has not happened. So the Trinity, the triad between Tao, Gem, and the 10,000 things, in actual determination never comes out as a trinity, always comes out as a pair. So that the manifestation always has Te and the symbols. And the symbols, one way to understand this would be to understand that the mind. So that Te and mind occur because Gem and the 10,000 things occur. Because our inner balance and the world occur together, constant with Tao. Te, or oneness, and the mind also occur. And they occur because if there were a correspondence to those two, the second and the fourth, the correspondence would be in a so-called sixth place. Unfortunately, the sixth place, which would be chaos, does not occur. The Tao reoccurs again. So that when we balance the world in Tao in ourselves, power and mind flow back into Tao again. And so Tao not only occurs in the first place, but the return to Tao occurs in what would be the sixth place. So that Te and the mind flow back to Tao, and the triadic quality is completed. The Trinity is completed. But it is a mystery. It's a subtlety. Because one could never determine, for lack of any kind of actual exacting evidence, because Tao, being zero-based, never really occurs. And so the designation of the Tao Te Ching is Wu Wei, which could be translated as nothingness, I suppose. But that's not what Lao Tzu says. In English, Lao Tzu talks this way. Here's my translation. Tao causes Tao is not eternal Tao. Name causes name is not eternal name. Not having name, heaven, earth, its beginning. Having name, the 10,000 things, its mother. Therefore, eternal not having desires, thereby contemplating its mystery. Eternally having desires, thereby contemplating its boundings. These two, themselves same origin, yet different name. Same called its profundity. Profundity. It's again profound. All mystery from this gate. Now, it's not very discursive English, but it's what Lao Tzu says in the way in which he says it. I'm using English like Lao Tzu uses his Chinese. He doesn't bring in philosophical concepts like the absolute truth is indescribable. He doesn't say that. He doesn't talk about merely relative conception. He doesn't talk that way at all, with due respect. He does not just simply then say, so as ever hidden we should look at its inner essence, as always manifest we should look at its outer aspects. This kind of proscriptiveness on Dr. Wu's part is actually second-hand, very subtle Immanuel Kant. And with Master Nee's, there's very subtle second-hand Neo-Confucian language from Wang Yang. But one doesn't have to go to all of this kind of erudite, learned comprehension. One can sense that if you get used to Lao Tzu, you can use English as he uses his Chinese. So that a translation does this kind of service. It gives the language, if we will gift it our attentiveness. And so, let's listen again to Lao Tzu. In my translation, I'm trying to maintain a completely open matrix with no intellectual currents, either conscious nor, quote, subconscious, nor, quote, second-hand, nor first-hand, by keeping a certain kind of a concentration. There are no tinges whatsoever. There's only the language Lao Tzu in speaking gives. Here it is again. Let's try the Chinese, the beginning, in Chinese, just to hear it. Dao Guo, Dao Fei, Chang Tao, Ming Guo, Ming Fei, Chang Ming. Wu Ming, Tian Ti Qi Qi Yu Ming Wang Xu Wu. Tao causes Tao is not eternal Tao. Name causes name is not eternal name. Not having name, heaven, earth, its beginning. Having name, the 10,000 things, its mother. Therefore, eternal not having desires, thereby contemplating its mystery. Eternally having desires, thereby contemplating its boundings. These two, mystery, boundings, these two themselves, same origin, yet different name, same, called profundity. Profundity. It's again profound. All mystery from this gate. Now the Chinese use of the word which translates here as gate, man, or men, like Tiananmen Square, the heavenly gate, men. In Chinese, always a gate is like the pair of posts with a lintel across the top. It's never so much the door of a gate. We think in English of a gate as being the door, but in Chinese, the term men means the openness that's there. It's a portal of coming from what would be outside in. or from inside out. The gate is the transformation point where one changes venue, where the world becomes interiorized or the interior becomes in the world. So that the gate has two posts. What are the two posts? The two posts are mystery and boundings. Mystery and boundings. The mysterious in the sense, if I may now bring in a little ancient Pythagorean quality, the mystery in the sense that there is an unlimitedness which occurs. And this is it aperion, the unlimitedness. In its occurring cannot be detected because there is no shape. The truly unlimited is mysterious. Whereas the limited, though it may be sometimes very large, can still be determined. Though it may be very small, one can still determine it. By bringing into play a sense of proportion, the kind of scientific American game of powers of 10. It doesn't matter how large a shape or how small a shape. The quark or the cosmos, one can find a power of 10, an exponential of perspective, a sense of proportion on some dimension where one can get to a view. All of the content of all of the views that are possible belong to the boundaries, to bounded things. What is not able to be in the bounded is the mystery, the unlimited, the aperion. This first section of the Tao Te Ching says that the gate of all mysteries is by bringing together the mystery and the boundary together. That they actually come from the very same source. Limit and unlimited come from the very same source. The actual occurrence that they come from the very same source is a profundity. Something that's profound. How can I explain this? If you've ever been on a boat leaving shore, going out into the ocean, and you have the experience where you see the water depth drop off and get deeper, and when you get out into real ocean off the continental shelf, there's a sense that the ocean becomes profound. There's a whole difference between water that's 100 feet deep or 200 feet deep from water that's 5 or 6 miles deep. Lao Tzu means to say that there is a profundity, there's a drop off into the oceanic that is so immense that the unbounded and the bounded occur together within something that can't even be talked about, the Tao. That the Tao is so vast that the unbounded occurs within it as a pair to the bounded. So he doesn't just say the term for profound. He doesn't just say this one time. He says it twice. He says the same is called it's Shin. The translation that Daiichi Suzuki gives here is mystery, but it means this profundity, and he repeats it twice, as if to say it's exponential in this oceanicness. The unbounded the mysteriousness which we participate with in some magical way is paired with the limitedness of this world. And the transitional, the alchemical, the transformational link is language. Language allows for us in our Gen, which is correspondent to Tao, profound exponentially, to come into an actual correspondence with things which are limited through language, through the ability of our bringing out from inside out a language which fills in the electronic shell of the ionized plasma of nature. Because we have given something from ourselves to nature in the name. The name is not just a throwaway. It's not just a negative to be compared to the Tao, but it's mysteriously a part of us within the Tao. Here's how the translation runs one more time. Tao causes Tao is not eternal Tao. Why would Tao not cause Tao? Because there's no causality involved. There's no equivalence involved. There's no equation. Tao equals Tao. That's an equation of identity. And a zero-base, nothingness plasma so transcends the level at which identity could get a grip, could function, could occur, as to completely outclass it and outdistance it because it's out of conception. So, Tao causes Tao is not eternal Tao. Name causes name is not eternal name. Notice now that naming is not negative to Tao's positive. Naming is just as mysterious as Tao. But if you think that a name then has caused a name, that's not eternal name. There is eternal name. The whole essence of ancient Egyptian mystery religion was that you received your real name. You learned to say your real name in the netherworld, and it was the key to the last barrier, that of rising into new life with the new day. Only the nameless are lost in hell. Those who know their name can return to life again. In other words, this is high, mysterious, spiritual Dharma. Tao causes Tao is not eternal Tao. Name causes name is not eternal name. Not having name, heaven, earth, its beginning. Having name, the 10,000 things, its mother. Therefore, eternal, not having desires, thereby contemplating its mystery. Eternally having desires, thereby contemplating its boundings. Now this whole Calvinist tendency of Protestant influenced missionary Chinese with Japanese minds, translating Lao Tzu as if having desires is some kind of bad thing. Despite the good advice that generally is, that's not what's being said here. What's being said is that the boundedness of the things of this world require us to participate for real, so that the desiring is within its proportion, within the ecology of things. Otherwise, you would never really need to feed the crying baby the food. You would never really believe that that baby needs this food now. So it's an egotistical illusion to think that one is scrapping desires. But what Lao Tzu is saying, be conscious that eternally having desires, what you thereby actually are able to contemplate is not the mystery, the unboundedness, but the boundings, the shapes, the forms, so distinguish well. So keep yourself alert and understand what the shapes are and what relationality they have and what ecology they occur in. And that this food and this spoon and that hungry baby can go together. That's what he's saying. And he's also further saying that the mystery of the unboundedness which can be contemplated by eternally not having desires. We are capable of a mode with no designation of contemplating mystery as mystery with no desire whatsoever. Not suppressed desires, but in the term of the Lankavatara Sutra, so vacant that one cannot even put the term vacant to it. One can become desireless to a degree in which it doesn't even occur to you that there is such a thing as desire. On the other side of that, complement to that, is the understanding of the need for compassion because some baby is really hungry. And the yogi who can get rid of all desires, who cannot also feed the baby, is an idiot. Is an egotistical fool. Is somebody popping their suspenders because they can get rid of desires. If you couldn't be taught at this late stage of evolution after 20 billion years to get rid of desires with all the capacities we have, one should be ashamed of oneself, not proud that you can do it. It's standard equipment. So Lao Tzu is saying not something in a pro-spirit, anti-world tone. He's saying something very profound. He's saying these two, eternal not having desires, eternally having desires, these two themselves, same origin, yet different name. In the one, contemplation discovers mystery. In the other, contemplation discovers boundings. Same origin, yet different name. Same called profundity. Profundity. It's again profound. All mystery from this gate. Now that's how the Tao Te Ching begins. Let's take a little break there. You recall that when we began, we talked about how the 5-phase energy cycle is very important. And how we start not with one, but with a zero base. And Tao is that zero base. And then in the second place, Te. And in the third place, us, Jen. And in the fourth place, the mind, or symbols, E. And the fifth place, the things of this world, the 10,000 things, as the Chinese would say. The first 5 sections of the discussion of Tao follow an interesting 5-phase energy cycle. Because we're no longer talking about Te, we are now talking about Tao. Notice that when we were talking about Te, we were talking about the bounded things, talking about the limited. Now we're talking about the mysteries, the unlimited. So the whole section on Tao goes with the whole section on Te as the two pillars of this gate to all mysteries. The lintel over this gate is what we bring to the Tao Te Ching. Our being able to bridge, to cap, to unite these two, Tao Te, so that the Ching, or the Jing, is our hearing of it, our understanding of it. So in a way, the title is symbolic. Tao Te Ching. We, by being able to juxtapose together Tao Te and showing our capacity for this oceanic profound profundity, we make it a Jing. We make it a book. We become a people of the book in the sense that we have understood that this book goes together, that the unnameable God and the Word of God go together, and that's what makes a Torah. If it were only what is said in the book, it would be a reduction to only the language in its limited form. And this is very sophomoric level. And none of the world's great spiritual literature exists on that kind of a level at all. All much deeper than that. The first 5 chapters in the Tao section of Tao Te Ching have these titles: Realizing Tao, Nourishing Person, Keeping the People, The Nun's Source, Emptiness's Function. So the Tao section in Tao Te Ching concerns the mysteries. We're no longer talking, as we did in Te, about the subtlety of things. We're now talking about the unboundedness of mysteries. So we're concerned with Tao, we're concerned with person, we're concerned with people in a different way. We're concerned with the Nun's source, the source of the Nun. We're concerned with emptiness's function. Notice that we can still talk about the function of emptiness. Talk about the source of the not. Talk about nourishing people, about realizing Tao. Nourishing the person. So that emptiness, the Nun, Tao, are in the same energy phase cycle ecology as person and people. Notice that our person is a spiritual occurrence which cannot be reduced to some shape. The whole flaw of the last 200 years in Western thought is the confidence, the almost arrogantly misplaced expectation that someone should have a shape. You must be that. You must realize who you are in the sense of defining your shape. This is a neurotic activity. To be constantly busy defining who you are is the essence of egotism. An egotist is always trying to define themselves, always trying to cut the shape of themselves out of others' lives, out of nature, out of the world situation, and they go around with great big shears in their mind, trying to snip out appropriate shapes, glistening stars, which they should be. And this is rather childish, but when put into a worldwide epidemic, pandemic frame, it creates chaos. The term that I used years ago was mysterious person, because the person has also mysterious qualities which are not able to be shaped at all. Unlimitedness, which gives access to Tao. So at the most, at the optimum, to put it in street level aphorisms, if you only spend half your time trying to define yourself, that's plenty. The other half, you would do just as well to let the mysteriousness of you have a little air. Now, if you cut the ego in half, it usually turns out to be a much more interesting situation. Except if you're not conscious of it, even in making that kind of adjustment, you look for someone else to be the other half of your ego. Well, you should shape up because I need you to complement me. How can I be whole if you're all the time unshaped? And this, of course, is a kind of subterfuge egotism, which expects other people to use their time to color in who we should be. Have we been gracious enough to leave ourselves open for them, and how dare they not pay attention to this opportunity and privilege? So this is a very specifically difficult situation. So the second chapter in the Tao is entitled Nourishing Person. Nourishing person. And Lao Tzu brings his language into play. Here's how John C.H. Wu translated it. I'm using his translation because it's very good. St. John's University Press, New York. Not bad at all. And when I hold these translations up in a comparison, I'm not using them as fodder for derisiveness. I'm trying to demonstrate how difficult it's been for anyone to use English in Lao Tzu's way. Even the best. I'm only picking the cream. Most translations are negligible. They don't hear Lao Tzu at all. They don't speak his language. Here's how Dr. Wu translates it. When all the world recognizes beauty as beauty, this in itself is ugliness. When all the world recognizes good as good, this in itself is evil. Indeed, the hidden and the manifest give birth to each other, the mystery and the boundaries. The hidden and the manifest give birth to each other. And then he goes into a whole list of complementarities which Lao Tzu brings in. Master Ni puts it in this way, a little more discursive. As soon as the world regards something as beautiful, ugliness simultaneously becomes apparent. As soon as the world regards something as good, evil simultaneously becomes apparent. In exactly the same manner, existence and non-existence give birth to each other. And then comes the listing of complementarities. This is what Lao Tzu actually says, using English in his way. Heaven, earth, all know beauty itself, busy with beauty, then ugliness only. All know goodness itself, busy with goodness, then not goodness only. For existence, none produce mutually. For existence, none mutually produce. The character sequences mutually produce. Then he will repeat the character for mutual all the way through, mutual and mutually. And this character that comes into play, xiang, occurs again and again. Xiang, shang, mutually produce. Xiang, shang, xiang, shang. It's like a refrain and a poetic litany. It's like the refrain is that these are not polarities which stretch tension between them, but that these occur in displaceable mutual, an ecology that occurs together. What occurs together? Existence and the character for non. Not non-existence. To use the term in English, non-existence, is actually a logical flaw on several accounts. The earliest mind in the West to determine this was Parmenides. You cannot designate non-being. You cannot say that such and such a thing is non-being. That such and such a thing is non-existence. Non-existence is not a thing. Non-existence has no is at all. So to say non-existence actually introduces again, like a sixth phase in the 5-phase energy cycle, a chaotic understanding in language. And we need to be precise in our language. We need to know that language can fill in the plasma of nature with the missing sparks of light and precipitate things alchemically so that they actually really occur. So that things are just as real as the mystery in which they are not separate. And that we balance those two perfectly in our spirit. Because just as we can give the missing electron and things really occur and really manifest and really exist, we can also take that electron away so that things return back to the plasma to become ionized again. We can give the missing sparks of light, and we can give back the space which the missing sparks of life leave when they go and swim. We can not only create things, we can create mystery also. We create mysteriousness just like we create manifestation. We do both. We're ambidextrous. And so Lao Tzu here actually says in Chinese, existence, non, mutually produce. Difficult, easy, mutually perfected. Long, short, mutually shaped. High, low, mutually inclined. Tone, voice, mutually harmonized. Before, after, mutually occur. Therefore, Spirit Gen dwells in non-busyness. His business. Our business is non-busyness. It's a play on words, but it's a deep play on words. The Chinese words, the Chinese characters convey the same kind of play that I've introduced in English. I'm speaking Lao Tzu like. This is how he says. This is the way that he talks. This is exactly the way the Chinese character translates then in this way. Therefore, Spirit Gem dwells. The term dwells here is very important. The character for dwells here, and chi, is going to be very, very close to another character which is pronounced a little differently later on. The character will be chi, and chi. Both are translated by D.T. Suzuki as dwells, but they're not the same character. And they have the difference in Chinese language that the English language also has. You can dwell somewhere, but you can also dwell upon something. If you dwell somewhere, it's open-ended. Dwelling somewhere, there's no time duration. But if you dwell upon something, if you continue to dwell upon it, and continue to dwell upon it, it's too much. So that the same spiritual capacity to presence oneself in a dwelling way belongs in mysterious openness. But that same capacity on the other side, in putting out, projecting from oneself the concern for it to be, to occur, dwelling upon it, it's best to do it in very short and not very often. Very short bursts. If you dwell upon something too much, it becomes overbearing. Whereas you can dwell indefinitely. So the Chinese language in Lao-Tzu has the same usage, the very same usage. So here's how the Chinese translates as an English language speaking. Therefore, Spirit Gem dwells in non-busyness, his business. Practices, not say, its education. The 10,000 things arise there, yet not refused, produced yet not owned, acted yet not claimed merit, accomplished yet not dwelled upon. For just as not dwelled upon, therefore never left. If you haven't overly projected upon something, then you don't have to compensatingly force a recall of that. So if the undernourishing person, there's a very mysterious flow in Lao-Tzu. After the most mysterious beginning, realizing Tao, it doesn't get easier, it gets even deeper. People point to the first chapter as being the essence of the Tao Te Ching. And one can only suggest to them, have you read the second chapter after that? Because it gets even deeper. Here's how the second one then reads in my whole translation, so you can get the gestalt of this. Heaven, earth, all know beauty itself, busy with beauty, then ugliness only. All know goodness itself, busy with goodness, then not goodness only. For existence, none mutually produce, difficult, easy, mutually perfected, long, short, mutually shaped, high, low, mutually inclined, tone, voice, mutually harmonized, before, after, mutually occurred. Therefore, Spirit Gem dwells in non-busyness, his business, practices not say, its education. The 10,000 things arise there, yet not refused, produced yet not owned, acted yet not claimed merit, accomplished yet not dwelt upon. For just as not dwelt upon, therefore never left. So one is always, you are where you are. Because you haven't over-projected yourself, you don't have to go out and get yourself and bring it back. Because you haven't dwelt upon something, you're where you are dwelling. And if you're where you're dwelling, then you never left in the first place. All this belongs with nourishing person. So that the person is not the shape of the action they can pull off. The scintillating razzmatazz of getting others to do what they want. That's not it at all. That's in fact extraneous. Just like the ego is really extraneous. The ego is not evil at all. It's just simply extraneous. It's odd, but it's dismissible, actually. What would the third chapter be then? We've got realizing Tao. We've had nourishing person. The third chapter then goes to keeping the people. The translation that Dichi Suzuki uses is keeping at rest the people. But that is too much like quieting them down. Placating. It's not. Keeping the people. And here's my translation. Not exalted, the worthy shows to the people, not in emulation. Not prizing the difficult to obtain, its treasure shows to the people, not busy thieving. Not seeing causes of desire shows the heart, not disturbed. So the first three lines, as it were, the first three flows of characters. Not exalted, not prizing the difficult to obtain, not seeing the causes of desire. What is this not seeing the causes of desire? What are the causes of desire? In a kind of a worldly way, it's like trying to fix blame. What was the cause? Who did this first? Whose fault is this? By not doing that, not seeing the causes of desire, shows the heart not disturbed. Not exalted, not being a projected big deal person, not exalted. The worthy shows to the people, not an emulation. Doesn't show himself as a model to be emulated, so they try to be big shots too. One has to watch this role model, because the role model is an egotistical cut-out idea of identity which has been broadcast and becomes larger than life. It's like the perfect example is the Hollywood movie star. And it's always an interesting thing to see movie star in themselves. They are just themselves. And very often, if they become dependent upon the projection, they're quite helpless. Quite helpless. The same thing with wisdom teachers. The Rajneeshas of this world are actually garish. They're like the showgirl who puts too much makeup on. You hope they don't go out into the sunlight too often. It would be embarrassing. So that not exalted, the worthy shows to the people, not an emulation, not prizing the difficult to obtain, its treasure shows to the people, not busy thieving. Not seeing causes of desire shows the heart not disturbed. Therefore, Spirit Gem, itself governing, empties the people's hearts, filling their innerness, weakens their desiring, strengthens their bones, always shows the people non-knowing, non-desiring, shows those knowing ones not their busyness. Indeed, busy in non-busy, then not governed. It's very, very interesting, quite mysterious, and most of the translations go into homiletics. Most of the translations look upon this as if Lao Tzu was giving good advice. He's giving very nice advice. Oh, it's just very sweet advice. By not exalting the talented, you will cause the people to cease from rivalry and contention. By not prizing goods hard to get, you will cause the people to cease from robbing and stealing. By not displaying what is desirable, you will cause the people's hearts to remain undisturbed. Therefore, the sage's way of governing begins by emptying the heart of desires, filling the belly with food, weakening the ambitions, toughening the bones. In this way, he will cause the people to remain without knowledge and without desire, and prevent the knowing ones from any ado. Practice non-ado, and everything will be in order. It's like the fortune cookie. It contains pithy little sayings that you could think about, but if you put any of that into practice, it evaporates. Good advice is like that. It really sounds good. It's like cosmetic, but you can wash it off by existence very quickly. The abrasion of actual occurrences scrub this kind of language off very quickly. If you are really in the grip of a crisis, this language would be an absolute irrelevance to you. Here's Master Nate. When the superior are not exalted, envy will not be aroused. Then there will be no rivalry and contention among people. When wealth is not treasured, desire for possessions will not be stirred up. Then people will not be attempted to rob one another. When objects of satisfaction are no longer preferred, the mind will be undisturbed. Then there will be no confusion in the hearts of people. Therefore, the guidance of the absolutely virtuous one is as such. Empty your mind, enjoy your good health, weaken your ambitions, strengthen your essence. When people are free from cunning, desire, and artifice, everything will be well governed of its own accord. It's also homiletic. Lao Tzu is not homiletic. He's not a Sunday morning preacher who's written out the sermon the night before. That's not his language style at all. His language is incredibly precise, high spiritual tone. What he say, not exalted, the worthy shows to the people, not in emulation. Not prizing the difficult to obtain, its treasure shows to the people, not busy thieving. Not seeing causes of desire shows the heart not disturbed. Therefore, Spirit Gem, itself governing, empties the people's hearts, filling their innerness, weakens their desiring, strengthening their bones, always shows the people non-knowing, non-desiring, shows those knowing ones not their busyness indeed. busy in non-busy, then none not governed. So his language has a kind of a scintillation as it comes back around. It comes back around and closes the syntactical pattern with an implosion back into Tao. The sense of the whole pattern of chapter 3 is that it makes an excursion out, resembling in a misapprehension good advice, but actually he's showing in the very way in which the language has its concourse that if you hear this right, if you are giving attentiveness to this language right, this language will accept your attention and go back to the Tao, leaving no trace. You won't have to wonder what it means because its meaning and you and your hearing would have been taken all the way back into the Tao, back into the zero base. And if you have gone back into the zero base, if the syntactical structure has imploded back to leaving no trace in this world, then chapter 4, the none's source. We're ready for the none's source. The source of the none. Busy in non-business, then none not governed. Here's my translation. Tao empty, yet employing it, evidently not exhausted. I've used a little James Joyce meter in here. Not to make a new poem's penny each, but just to give the sense that Lao Tzu in his Chinese is also doing this. He's showing a kind of a character. In chapter 4, the character that he's using here, Chung, Tsung, empty. Tsung, Yung, Ying. These characters have a kind of a sound. It's almost like he's showing us something, and instead of moving it in a logical line of development for its meaning, he's rotating it so we see the different facets of the same thing for its meaning. Instead of having a line of grammatical development as the form which carries the argument of meaning, he shows us the gestalt in all of its scintillation so that we intuit the gestalt that is the meaning and also its mystery. It's a whole different level of genius. It's like a level of Plotinus. If you're all the time struggling to try to hear what Plotinus is saying, you miss it. You have to learn to go with him, because Plotinus lets his language go. He doesn't keep track of it. He doesn't wonder what he's going to say. If you would tape someone speaking hard Dharma, look at how many times are they saying, They don't ever say Never. Why do they never say Because there's no searching for the language. The language is flowing. It's like if you ever hear any of the old tapes from the 1950s of Manly Hall. He speaks straight out in a horizon like ripples just going on. You never hear it. Never. Or like Bertrand Russell, who never ever corrected manuscripts. He just wrote them out and that was it. He could write ace perfect, beautiful, upper-class English prose, first time out, because his mind was clear. When someone's mind is clear, their language is like ringing a bell. They say exactly what is right there and right and there. And Lao Tzu is this way. Tao empty, yet employing it, evidently not exhausted. Profound. Oh, the character literally means this exclamation, oh, sheep. Oh. Tao empty, yet employing it, evidently not exhausted. Profound. Oh. Corresponds to the 10,000 things, itself ancestor. Blunts its own sharpness, unravels its own complications, modulates its own light, resounds its own dust, tranquil. Oh! Corresponds to lightness remaining. I not know whose son seems heaven itself's ancestor. Something there before heaven was there. What was there before heaven was there? Heaven is like, in one sense, all of the limited things together. And in another sense, esoterically, it's the unboundedness, the unlimited. But there was something there before. Well, we have to even take the language back because we should speak of it. There was not a something there. There was not a something, and it was not in some place called there. So Lao Tzu says, corresponds to likeness remaining. What is likeness remaining? The Chinese, the translation here is very, very difficult. Because Lao Tzu's language is very difficult. Very, very difficult. Because he is speaking on the level of philosophic wonder. He's being stunned into super alerted surprise because his language has found a way to flow in a pretzel that illuminates itself. And in the flash of it, he realizes that it had no salt, no taste at all. And he marvels that he is able to speak this way. Corresponds to likeness remaining. I not know whose son seems heaven itself's ancestor. Here's how John Wu translates it. Hidden in the deeps, yet it seems to exist forever. I do not know whose child it is. It seems to be the common ancestor of all, the father of things. No, the father of things is the mind. The fourth phase of the energy cycle. The symbols. The symbols are really the father of things. We, by returning those sparks of language light to things, make them what they are. The world occurs when I, speaking about it, says. One can incidentally, in late 20th century higher mathematics, has showed that this actually does occur. There is no world out there at all, but when we speak of it, it is there. The whole thing about Schrodinger's wave mechanics was all about learning how to express this seeming paradox. There are no things whatsoever. And as soon as we say that, the things are there. And have been precipitated because we've begun to talk about them. It's like a magic show that as soon as you whisper about something, it occurs. But if you don't talk about it, it doesn't occur at all. Not interested. But as soon as we begin to bring language into play, language like a needle brings the thread into play and shapes occur. Things really happen. Particles occur. And energy seems to occur in particleness. And as soon as we leave it alone, the particality dissolves and is not there. Is not there. Is not where? Is not in any shapedness. Where is it then? It's in mystery. It's in the boundlessness. But the boundlessness and the bounded are the same in their source. The non's source. What is that source? That source is like a double take in wonder. One says something beautifully accurate and then is surprised that you did this, but then says something around that and is surprised that that didn't contain the wonder. The wonder continued to radiate out beyond that super shape that you put on it, so that there's a second wonder, and then one gets retrospectively the sense that there is no there at the known's source. But we can occur. We are really something else. We are not what we were told we were. We're not what the identification cards say. We're not what the dossier says. Those are just passports to tentative little skits called this particular life mode. But that's not what we are. So the non's source sounds like a Chaucer. Tao empty, yet employing it, evidently not exhausted. Profound. Corresponds to the 10,000 things, itself ancestor, blunts its own sharpness, unravels its own complications, modulates its own light, resounds its own dust, tranquil. Corresponds to likeness remaining. I not know whose son seems heaven itself's ancestor. And then the Tao Te Ching allows that to be displaced by chapter 5, emptiness's function. That's a cliffhanger. You have to come next week.